Okay, I got that. Yes, and that was actually my first point on my list as well. So everybody be aware that we are being recorded. Behave, please. And that's that's one of the points that I wanted to say after greeting, of course. We are here in the Friday, well, depending on the time zone, morning session. If you are in London, early morning, 8 o'clock. To the FEL conference from 2020, which has been going well so far, I understand, and I saw partly as well, which is really nice. We will have 4 contributions this morning, and I understand that luckily nobody has cancelled, so that is really nice. Everybody is allowed and asked to make questions. You can put them in the chat even already during the session, and I will try to monitor that and ask the question afterwards. We have 20 minutes for everybody to speak, and then 10 minutes for discussion, answering of questions, and so forth. I will try to be strict, and as we don't have any visual clues, I will switch on my camera, but I probably will have to make an audible clue as well. So I hope you don't mind. So I put my clock here at 7 minutes and 3 minutes and 1 minute to go, so that you have an idea. So 1/3 to go, 3 minutes to go, and 1 minute to go. And yeah, please be strict on time so that we have enough time for the discussion. So I think that was the most important part. I hope I didn't forget anything. I see already our first speakers, and for me it's on the top left. I see Robert Amery, and he is from the University of Adelaide and from Kaurna, Warra, Pintyanthi. I have no idea if I pronounced that right. He's presenting together with Mary and Gale from the University of Adelaide and the Tauondi College, and also Susie Greenwood from the University of Adelaide, and they will present their talk, which is called Resourcing and Awakening Language, Kaurna of the Adelaide Plains, South Australia. So, Robert and colleagues, the floor is yours.
I tell you, thank you. I'll just share my screen. Where are we? Okay, that's all good now. Yacha warana tampina, mudlina pinchadlu, yacha warana karpaticha. So in the words of the Kaurna people from Adelaide, South Australia, let Indigenous languages be recognised. Let's make things or resources to support Indigenous languages. So we're talking about the Kaurna language from the Adelaide Plains here in South Australia, the land of the capital city of South Australia, of Adelaide, a city of what, 1.5 million people these days. So when a language is not spoken fluently as the first language of a community, it has no fluent speakers, there are no sound recordings, it's really important that we get good quality resources. So the last speaker of the Kaurna language died in 1929, but really it probably wasn't spoken on a daily basis since the early 1860s, so that's really quite some time ago. We started our efforts to reclaim and reintroduce the language in 1989, at a time when we didn't have any resources. In fact, all we had was this missionary grammar written by German missionaries Tuchelman and Sherman in 1840. It was just Kaurna to English. There was no English to Kaurna finder list. So if we wanted the word for wombat, watu, we had to read through the whole book just about. It had a 24-page sketch grammar. You can see on the right-hand corner, a vocabulary of about 2,000 words and about 200 sentences in Kaurna translated into English. The image here of Gudlipina, known as Captain Jack, he was one of the main sources for Tuchelman and Sherman's work. The following year, in 1991, Jane Simpson provided us with an electronic version of Tychelman's manuscript. Tychelman continued working on the language after they published in 1840, and this manuscript was sent to Governor Grey in South Africa, which is where we got it back from Cape Town. And it has additional words, additional senses recorded of existing words, and additional phrase and sentence examples. Well, in our efforts to revive and reintroduce Kaurna, we started with songs, which was a very good place to start because songs are a standalone product and much easier to introduce songs than to introduce a kind of standard language lesson in the beginning stages. The following year, in 1992, we had this request to translate this storybook, Tucker's Mob, a story set in the Northern Territory at Barunga. Now, we undertook this translation, but the language was far too hard for where people were at that time. I guess what was important was that it showed people that what was possible with the Kaurna language at a time when most people had written the language off as being dead, extinct. This was followed on by songs. We produced another songbook in 1999, all of Kaurna songs this time. And we always try to accompany our written resources, our print resources, with electronic media. So these had cassette tapes at the time, been remastered since into CDs. We produced a Kaurna word list back in 1995 and various iterations as more words were added and it was refined. We had a spelling reform in 2010 and our latest word list, Warragana Yalaka, came out in 2017. And we've got a proper dictionary on the way, our first draft dictionary in 2014. And Susie Greenwood is working on this in Flex at the moment. Over to you, Marianne.
In 2006, we were offered some money to produce a resource in the Kaurna language. And we thought straight away of producing a little alphabet book because people had said to me in work I was doing with a neighbouring language that the things we were producing, the dictionaries, were no use to anyone if they didn't know how to actually pronounce the words. So we produced a little alphabet book that goes through the sounds page by page and included a CD with the pronunciation of each page. And since then, now that CDs aren't so prevalent, we've put them onto a PDF and they're available now on a USB.
In 2000, we had a series of workshops, Kaurna Warra Pintyanthi, which the name of our organisation comes from, creating Kaurna language. And we decided if this language was really going to live again, we needed words and expressions that parents could use with their babies and young children. And at that workshop, some people wanted to do stuff in conducting funerals in the Kaurna language, which is where this project started from. 2006, we produced this little booklet. It has translated hymns into Kaurna, favourite hymns that Nungas love to sing, prayers, Bible verses, liturgy, statements of sympathy. We had some sympathy cards as well, condolences. And this other photo here from 2017, when our elder, Arpadla Alicha Wallararigni, passed away, and we quickly formed a choir and sung some of those hymns at her memorial service. In 2013, we put together a rather large 160-page learner's guide. And in the very beginning, we had profiles of central Kaurna people involved in the Kaurna language movement with some statements from them as to what the language meant to them and a little profile of those individuals. The next part, learning Kaurna language, is an aid for people to just get in and start learning and using the language. Part 2 in the back was really an explanation of Kaurna grammar, hopefully in simple, understandable terms.
In the back of that same learner's guide, there was a set of 14 posters, and they were available for people to photocopy and use in classrooms if they wanted to teach body parts or things for use in the kitchen, the dining room, bird names, etc. But it was hard to photocopy from the back of a book that was perfectly bound. You couldn't open it up and photocopy very easily. So this year we've reproduced those same posters in A2 size and had them laminated and reworked them and made them a little bit more professional. So they're now available for the community. And another project that we've just embarked on, particularly with Susie Greenwood's huge help, was this little book called Kaurna for Smarties, which includes some useful words, phrases and conversations. So again, from my experience working with Ngarrindjeri, which is the neighbouring community, we'd produced a little book called Ngarrindjeri for Smarties, and it's been a huge hit all over Australia as a template of what is useful in the way of written resources, because people wanted actual phrases that they could use in everyday situations. And even though they were in the learner's guide was very big, it was A4 size, it was compact, and it was hard to find these useful little phrases quickly. So we just put together in this little book that's only A5 size, not too big, and the phrases are readily accessible. But more importantly, we've got at the back a section that has all the pronoun charts, the noun charts and the verb charts, which we use all the time in our training courses for adults, as well as a glossary and a Kaurna glossary and a finder list, which Susie Greenwood put together at the back, that includes all the words that we have inside those phrases at the front of the book.
About 2 years ago, well, 1 year ago, we had an approach from the National Library in Canberra to produce a Kaurna version of this children's storybook, Who Am I? Nganangai in Kaurna. And the translations were done by Kaurna people themselves. I only came in at the last minute to do a last bit of checking. So Kaurna people are at that level now. And we always like to double up, not only with a print-based resource, but an electronic resource. So we've got a little video clip here of Kira Bain reading this storybook to her niece. We also produced a set of greeting cards, birthday, Christmas, Mother's Day, Father's Day, St. Valentine's Day, sympathy card and so on. Illustrations done by Katrina Gallabina Power, a Kaurna woman. And football is a big thing in South Australia, and a very, very big thing amongst Aboriginal people in South Australia. And here's a couple of prominent Aboriginal footballers, the two teams, the Crows and the Port Power. And so we did some posters and some stickers in that language. Look, there's a terrific expression, Mi kua mati, may the crows pick out your eyes, in Tycoman and Sherman, but we weren't allowed to use it because the Australian Football League said it was too violent. So we had to go with something lame, Kuana Padninga, go Crows, instead. This is one of the more interesting things we've done just this year. We've produced a set of Kaurna playing cards, but instead of the hearts, we use the mulabaka, the Kaurna shield. Instead of the diamonds, we use the kandapi, the Kaurna stone axe, and the spades there, the tankyadli, the rush basket. The Queen here is Ivarichi. She was the last speaker who died in 1929. Gadlit Pina here is the Irabina, the warrior, the Jack, and he was known to the colonists as Captain Jack. And we've got King John Mulawera Borka as the king. So we've drawn on Kaurna icons in producing a, well, otherwise standard card game. We also have a KWP website with a whole lot of resources on there, and a Kaurna place names website where we're mapping place names on Google Earth. You can click on the name, and if you're lucky, it should be. hear the pronunciation of the Kaurna name and information about what the name means, etc.
7 minutes.
One of our researchers, 10 minutes, okay, is researching place names.
I'm sorry, 7 minutes.
Okay, I better move on. We're producing a lot of electronic resources these days, and these are really popular with kids. We've got a Pintyanthi puppet show, and we exploit code switching in putting these shows together. So Pilta in the middle understands both languages, Kaurna and English. Ngungana here, or Tanda, just speaks Kaurna, and Kula is the silly one, the koala on the left, who tries to speak Kaurna and makes lots of mistakes. And in unpacking those mistakes, we generate a lot of humour. And we could do the whole thing just in Kaurna, but we would lose the audience. So we exploit code switching for an English-speaking audience. Been doing some interviews with Tanda, the red kangaroo, with prominent Nunga Aboriginal entities around town. And we have language lessons electronically with on YouTube with Jalan Pilla New Church here and Jack Gunya Buckskin. We do a lot of collaborations with schools here. These kids at Gilly Street Primary, taught by Taylor Tipu, the one with the snake around the neck, a few years ago. And I think this one's heads, shoulders, knees and toes in Kaurna. Get a few kids together, put together a YouTube clip. Working with schools. This video clip here is 100 primary school children singing I Am Australian in the Kaurna language. Ngai Nina Wilda Tidnamiu. You, we're Australian. I'll hand over to Marianne to wrap it up.
Okay, so the important principles with Kaurna resource production, as you can see on your screen, all resource production involves Kaurna people throughout as much as possible, with planning and designing resources, writing scripts, puppet shows, lessons for the YouTube clips as upfront presenters, and then some people prefer to be behind the camera, so behind the scene productions. And we've got bios or profiles of people involved in the revival movement in our learner's guide. Lots of photos of community in the alphabet book and the learner's guide, and also people composing phrases actually within our classes that we run for our Smarties book. So our observations on Kaurna resource production. The resources really grow out of our workshops and our language classes and our collaborations. So we're actually producing the resources as we learn and revive the language. And reclaiming the culture is happening at the same time as we're reclaiming the language. So we've got a cultural workshop coming up where people are going to learn how to make music sticks or clap sticks and digging sticks coming up next weekend. Quality is ensured with drafts in circulation before final publication. So our Smarties, for example, is draft for a year, and we're getting feedback about that and thinking of putting QR readers on the white spaces at the bottom of each page so people can hear the pronunciation of the phrases. So I guess from that you can see that the process is just as important as the end product. And our feedback from Kaurna people and other people have been that all ages love the Pintyanthi puppet shows. They're engaging and funny. Some kids have turned up at school already knowing some of the Kaurna language because they've accessed them on YouTube before they even start school and watch them over and over again, particularly their favourite episodes. Some feedback about this learner's guide was that it was just too big, bulky and too much in it and you couldn't find things easily. So we responded to that and produced the Smarties in response. Now, concluding remark. So our conclusion is, despite having no fluent speakers and very limited written documentation, 30 years on, the Kaurna community, in collaboration with supporters, have managed to create a wide range of language resources in a variety of media. These are now being used to support the language and the teaching of the language and reawakening the language of the Adelaide Plains. I tell you.
Ngacha Yungandalia, Yakanandalia, thank you. Ngatati,
Wow.
any questions?
Wow, great. I see people clapping and I want really like to join them because, wow, this is absolutely amazing. I've seen a lot of efforts in Brazil in revitalizing or strengthening languages, but I think I've never seen something so complete and so multifaceted and engaged as this. Wow. So really, my congratulations to you. Also, thank you for staying very well into time. Actually, we made up for the initial 2 or 3 minutes for getting acquainted and set up. So this is all very, very great. I inscribed myself early on in the talk so that I will have a chance to make my own question. And I'm really intrigued. How did you manage to produce all that material based on so sketchy a description and so few words? I don't know. How did you get at the pronunciation of words? How did you imagine how the language was pronounced if it has been gone for so long time already? Where do the songs come from? Are those traditional songs, or did somebody compose them and created the letter recently? How did you create all this material?
Thanks, Sebastian. A few questions there. In terms of pronunciation, neighbouring languages are very, very important. So Adnyamatna in the Flinders Ranges is reasonably closely related to Ghana. Where Ghana says Pari, creek or river, they say Vari. So we know what kind of R is in that word. There are 3 different R's, 3 different rhotics, and we can't tell from the spelling. But if we've got a cognate in the neighbouring language, we do know what it should be. Often we have to have a guess though. Say the word for blood, the missionary spelled K-A-R-R-O. There's about 6 different possibilities for the pronunciation of that, but because it was recorded in the neighbouring Nurgunor language, we know it's got a long vowel and an R like in English, garu. In terms of the words, yes, there are lots of gaps in the record and there are lots of ill-defined words. Fortunately, when it came to new technologies, Teichelman and Sherman recorded over 100 what were new terms, what were neologisms then for Ghana people. So a key is a nullity, the twister, the twisting thing. Matches are a dipogadla, spark fire. These days we've got the waraichiti, the voice sending thing for the telephone, the turaichiti, the picture sending thing for the television, the data projector, or the derbima in your language, is the turabati, the image shining thing. Fairly easy to come up with new terminology for concrete things. It's the abstract things which are much, much more difficult. When we wanted a word for meaning, for instance, we went for yitpiwara. Yitpi is seed, but it's also spirit, yitpitukacha. So our yitpiwara, the meaning of a word, is really the spirit, the essence of the word. And often it takes quite some time to think about those. Might take days to toss it over with a number of people, and we have workshops to throw these ideas around.
Part of the movement, well, a very important part of the movement is training. I say the 3 key terms are training, training, training. So we actually have a unit in our training course. It's called Translating Concepts into the local language. And we have 8 methods that we teach our students of how you can create new words for new concepts. And we also follow the philosophy that Corey Theatre, a colleague of ours, developed of saying it's better to borrow from a neighbour than a stranger. So we look towards other Aboriginal languages as leads rather than turning to English and anglicising the Ghana language.
Mm-hmm. Great.
And sometimes to Maori and other languages as well.
Mm-hmm. Great. We have two questions which came in. One was probably meant to be rather personal, but I think it has general value. Simona Scudi, would you like to ask the question yourself? If so, please switch on your microphone.
Yes, hello, good morning to everybody. From Milan, Lombardy. I saw you did wonderful things, and I'm an activist in my language. I do the same. So I just wonder if you have some material which can be shared, I mean, or translated, available for free, so that also other activists from other languages can use them. I like, for example, the puppets on YouTube. I will have a look. I don't know if they are, if it's possible to translate them in our language, but I think if it's for free, it can be a possibility. Thank you so much. Thank you. Great job.
Yes, all the electronic resources are there available for anybody to watch. Yeah.
Yep. I think the question aimed at digital materials with a text so that it's easier to translate. So PDFs or something, a basis for what you did in the other media.
Yeah, I guess we could share that.
I guess it might be
just
interesting.
How relevant it's going to. Just how relevant it's going to be for another language is another question, of course.
Exactly, there's always the cultural translatability of these things. Gert, you also wanted to make a question. We still have some 2 minutes to go, so please go ahead.
My question is about the fact whether people coming from outside are also learning the language, because of children going to these meetings with other Aboriginal children. Do they learn it, and do people also speak it? So people from outside.
Well, I'm not a Ghana person, neither is Marianne. We're non-Indigenous, but been working with the community for 30 years now. There's quite a demand from non-Aboriginal people to learn Ghana these days. 80% of South Australia's population is in Ghana country because the capital city is there and Australia is highly urbanised. And many schools in Ghana country want to teach Ghana. They're looking for a teacher of Ghana, but we can't supply them at the moment, which is why we're really focusing on the training.
We're running a training course to train teachers at the moment. So we're trying to fill that very big need.
Some Ghana people would be happy for non-Indigenous teachers to teach the language, but they want to be in control. They want to know that those teachers actually have some knowledge and some skills and are using the right resources and have connections with the community. That's where it's at the moment.
They could become teachers themselves, of course, the Aboriginal people.
That's the preferred model, yes.
We're trying to work ourselves out of a job.
Yeah. Okay.
But how many people do speak the language now? Is it used by them in which context?
It's really a very small number. Look, Jack Gunya-Buckskin is the most fluent speaker. He learned his language as a young adult, and his children, I think we could describe as semi-native speakers of Ghana. There are some words, concepts, phrases that they only know in Ghana. There are other things they only know in English, and there are a lot of things they know in both languages. But they're certainly able to respond to and answer my questions in Ghana language. But the number of people is really less than 20 who have much knowledge of the language at this stage.
So we have about 15 in our class at the moment, and we've already graduated 12, so the numbers are slowly increasing, and we're hoping those people will go out and then train more people, and yeah, it might have an exponential effect.
But for a language like Ghana, there's only one way, and that's up.
Yes.
It couldn't have gone down any further.
Great, thank you so much indeed. This was really a very interesting start to our session, and I really congratulate you for all what you have done and this contribution. Thank you very much indeed. We are moving on. I hope.
Thanks.
Thanks again. Yes. I hope that Cathy Bow is already around. She's our next speaker. She comes from Darwin University. Oh yeah, there she is. I see her. Great, excellent. Good morning or good afternoon to you. You will be talking about building connections through teaching and learning Indigenous languages online. So that's a very related talk also from Australia. So I'm really intrigued to hear.
Thank you. Let me just get this going. So you can see my slides and hear me okay?
Indeed, we do.
Okay, thank you. So thank you very much, Sebastian, and for the organisers of the conference for this opportunity. I'm coming to you from beautiful Larrakia country, which is in Darwin in the Northern Territory of Australia. And I want to pay my respects to the Larrakia elders, past and present, for taking care of this beautiful country for so many years. I'm representing Darwin University and also the Australian National University in Canberra. And I want to share today about how we can use technology to support building connections in an online context in teaching and learning Indigenous Australian languages. There we go. So I'll start by talking about language endangerment in Australia, and then about teaching Indigenous languages in a related context, online and through university. And I'll talk specifically about the context of Biningunwok, which is an Indigenous language of the Northern Territory, and how we've built connections in the online teaching of that language through university. So as you may know, sadly, Australia is one of the world leaders in language extinction. Prior to colonisation, there were between 250 and 750 languages and dialects. And today there's only about 120 that are still in use in any way. And of those, only about a dozen are still spoken across all generations. This map shows that the languages that are documented as having more than 1,000 speakers, and there's only 10 of them. So even our strong languages are still very small in number. And many of the other languages are being reclaimed from documentary sources, like you've just heard a bit about from the Kaurna language area. And there's a lot of work happening at the moment with technology to support endangered languages. And I'm sure we've all seen the media stories about how technology will save these languages, but I'm sure most people here recognise that technology won't save languages, it's people that will save languages. So in most cases in Australia, language courses are taught face-to-face where possible, but these days that's shifting quite a bit to an online context. So most of the face-to-face work is supported by technology, but now there's a shift to being fully online. Not just because of COVID, but also many of the languages are in very remote places and hard to get to. But now these days, even if you're in the country where the language is spoken, online options are certainly very valuable under the current situation. So I want to talk briefly about some of the affordances and constraints of online teaching of languages. So culturally, it's an opportunity to connect learners who don't live in the area, who live in remote regions, that they're able to access materials, and that the language content can stay under Indigenous authority. Pedagogically, obviously, there's more flexibility with online approaches and the availability of the materials. Administratively, you can share across institutions and have multiple enrolments. And technologically, the ability to use and share rich multimedia content and to connect online through video conferencing. But for every affordance, there's always constraints. So culturally, these languages are very place-based. They're tied to the land. And so disconnecting the language from the land by putting it online and teaching across long distances isn't really the natural way that it should be done. It creates isolation from the language community to the learners, and also even isolation from other learners if it's all taught online. There are differences in institutions that can cause administrative issues, and basically technology, it's a poor substitute for immersion, for sort of genuine face-to-face language learning processes. So my own work has been in the context of university language teaching, and of the 120 languages that I mentioned are still in use in Australia, there's only 7 that are currently being taught at universities. And 4 of them are strong languages, which is spoken across all generations, and 3 of them are in revival, including Kaurna that you just heard about from Rob and Marianne. And there's it's quite challenging to develop new university courses for language, for Indigenous languages. There's often likely to be very low enrolments and lack of teachers and resources, and different requirements for university language learning and what the Indigenous elders might want to share. And so it also can be quite expensive to develop technology or to buy technologies like learning management systems for sharing. So part of this project was to develop what we called a digital language shell for a low-cost, low-tech option for Indigenous language groups to share their language and culture online. So I want to move on to my case study, which is Biningunwok Regional Language Centre. So Biningunwok is a suite of related language varieties spoken in the top end, in West Arnhem Land, in the top end of Australia. You can see the little tiny red dot at the top of the map. There's about 2,000 speakers. So for Australia, that's a strong language. It's spoken across all the generations. But it's still highly endangered. Several of the varieties of Biningunwok are no longer spoken or only have elderly speakers. And Gumwingu, the strongest of the languages, is still only a couple of generations away from disappearing altogether. There is a language centre there, which has been doing a lot of important work in keeping the language going and developing resources. And that photo there, you'll see the language committee, which is very active in promoting and developing resources for the language, mostly for their own people, for literacy and language maintenance, but also for outsiders who are interested as well. And one of the key things about this area, the language area, is of particular interest anthropologically and historically and environmentally. So you might have heard of Kakadu National Park, which is a World Heritage listed national park. That's in the language area of this group. There's also a large uranium mine. It's a high area for tourism, and some of the oldest rock art in the world is in this area. So there's sort of a national interest in the region, and yet the language is almost invisible really because of the push for English across Australia. So in developing a course with the language authorities, we didn't want to just create a Western style language course, but we wanted to incorporate the priorities of the language authorities. And for them, language is all about the land. The language comes from the land, so it must be place-based. And for many of the members of the language committee, it was hard to imagine teaching language to people who they didn't know, who weren't in the community, but people who were sitting on their computers in Darwin or in Canberra. So we had to find ways to connect speakers and learners. So we thought about what happens when non-Indigenous people come to communities. So they might come to work in the clinic or the school or in other areas. What do they need to know to live well amongst Binin people? How do they behave correctly and to be safe and to show respect to the people they're working with? So the language authorities were less interested in grammar and vocabulary and pronunciation, but more about behaviour and identity. And so we tried to build in identity into the language course. So we worked together to co-design the curriculum that would meet the goals of the language committee, as well as what the university would expect in a language course. So lessons on grammar and vocabulary and pronunciation, have assessment tasks and so on. But we structured it in such a way that it would incorporate a lot of cultural information and the information that the language committee identified as being useful and important for non-Indigenous people who are coming in to the community. So we developed, started with a 4-unit pilot course and developed into a university course across a 12-week semester. And Biningunwok is one of the better resourced Australian languages. It has a 2-volume grammar, there's several descriptive works, and because of that particular area, there's a lot of interest in environmental issues, in art. So there's materials created for Binin people, so health messages from the government that are translated into language. There's also materials produced by the community for learning about health and environment in language. There was also, there used to be a bilingual program in the main community school in the area where they produced materials for children to read and write in their first language. The program only lasted a few years and most of the books were destroyed, but we've collected as many as possible and they're part of the Living Archive of Aboriginal Languages, which collects lots of materials from that kind of program across the Northern Territory. And we've been able to take those books, which are designed for teaching vernacular literacy, and turn them into learning materials for non-Indigenous learners through the university course. So we developed the online course using the digital language shell, and we've delivered it a few times now to different cohorts. So I mentioned the pilot course, which was 4 units a few years ago, just to test the program, see how it all worked. That developed into the full semester course, which we tested on a group of students at the Australian National University in Canberra who were studying. They weren't particularly keen wanting to learn an Aboriginal language, but they were training to be language teachers. And they tested out the online course as potential teachers to see what it's like to learn online, to put themselves in the position of the learners. So they gave some interesting feedback from their perspective. And then since then, we've offered the full university course a few times now at both the ANU and at Darwin University. And the learners for that are from all different backgrounds. There's many people who work in the language area at the clinic or the school who are interested in developing language skills to relate to people on country. There's also students around the country around Australia who are interested in learning an Indigenous language, that from different backgrounds, including health or environment and the arts and politics, and quite a lot of interest from international students, which we were surprised at. So as I said, we tried to build the idea of connections and identity into the content of the course itself. And we used Indigenous pedagogies to do this. So starting from the idea of identity. So you need to establish who you are and where you fit in before you really earn the right to speak. And like many Australian Indigenous languages, there's a skin system where each person fits into a cyclical system of 8 sets of names, which are according to moieties. Everything's split into 2 moieties, Yiddicha and Dua. And so they're patramoieties, and then there's matramoieties, which here are Narajku and Marku. And this creates a set of 8 names, and everyone sort of fits into that somewhere and is related to everyone through that particular system. And the language committee agreed that the learners in this course should get skin names. That way they could begin to identify and connect with Binin in an appropriate way. It sort of gave them a face, if you like, because without that they didn't really exist. So having a skin name connects them to all Binin language speakers, and they become legitimate peripheral participants in a Binin community. And so we built lots of resources to promote this concept throughout the course, including lots of videos demonstrating the way the skin chart works and how people relate to each other and what they call each other and the different rights and responsibilities within those relationships. So focusing the content was not just in the teaching part, but also in the assessment part. So the students, we built many aspects of the course around what the language authorities gave us as the issues of identity. So when they recorded themselves introducing themselves, we turned that into language lessons. How do I say my name is and my skin name is and where do I come from? So the students are learning the grammar and vocabulary and pronunciation they need to build those relationships, to use the kind of language that will connect them with other people. And so the assessment task is to introduce yourself to a person by giving your name and skin name and where you come from, but also in dialogue asking, what's your skin name? What do I call you? Because there's different terms for how you're related to people within the skin system. And they have different terms of address and terms of reference. So it's a kind of holistic assessment that covers the linguistic side of things, but also the cultural side of things. 6 minutes. Thank you. So I want to share a little bit some comments from the language authorities and from some of the learners of the course about their experience of teaching and learning Gunwingu, particularly focusing on the ideas of identity and connection that came through in the course. So one of our key elders, Jill Nunmirab, one of the language authorities, said, this is the sort of thing they can learn when they get their own skin names and clan group membership. So Binin people will then realise these people already have a moiety given to them. And in the same way, the learners can say, I am Dua or I am Yiricha. Then they will understand properly because they will have skin names and belong to clan groups. She also said that Binin may give a man the Nambangari skin name and membership for a particular clan group as his adoptive brother. Then they will call him by his clan name and they'll recognise him when they see him. So from this I get that it's not just allocating a name as a label of some kind, but it's actually embedding them into the system of relationships within the community but also it helps them to learn. They understand. Once they've got a skin name, they become like a Benin person and they can start to understand. So thinking about the feedback from the learners, I've split them into 3 different groups. The first are from those who are working in West Arnhem Land, so relating to Benin regularly. So most people would just use English in those situations. So the language of the clinic and the school and so on is English, but many people chose to learn some language to build their relationships with people. And some of their comments include that everyone is so interconnected that it seems you can always find common ground with people by discussing your kinship relationship. So this complex system is a common topic of conversation with Benin, and I'm always learning more about how it works. So you can always start a conversation by just giving your skin name and working out the connections you have and what you call people. Someone else said they found learning skin groups and applying it on the ground has been cool. I've been practicing my introductions with local people and they are helping, and they are so excited with helping me. And the focus, someone recognised that the way we structured the course was that the focus was definitely directed by the Benin. You could get that what's most important to them is to start with skin and skin names, then talking about looking after each other and kinship. So that was, we explicitly put that in the course, but they recognised that that's what people are talking about anyway. Some of the learners who didn't have connections with Benin struggled with that. It's like, why do we keep talking about skin and family and so on? Can't we talk about the weather or other things? But it was recognised that this is what Benin talk about, and it's a great way to connect and relate to people. So the second group of learners don't live in the area, and many of them had minimal connection with Aboriginal people in general, or particularly Benin. And so their views were a little bit different, but most of them found it quite positive. So one learner said, asking me to choose a skin name is a good way to motivate me to actively participate in the target language learning. So rather than just getting a list of skin names as information, choosing one sort of puts them into that system, and it motivated her to actively participate in the learning. Another learner said, when I signed on for the course, I imagined it as just learning the language, but it has provided a great insight into the culture as well, especially in relation to kinship systems and skin names.
2 minutes.
And someone else said, okay, I don't have any ancestors who are Aboriginal that I know of. I still feel like it makes me feel more connected to this place, like it's actually helping me to build my sense of identity as a person where I fit in here. So even non-Aboriginal people with minimal connections, she felt like it helped her sense of identity as an Australian citizen. And finally, comments from international learners who'd come to Australia to study various disciplines. And this is most different in the group that didn't choose to study Gumingu, but was training to be language teachers. And one learner said, I chose one name from the list, Ngalwamut. This one is close to my Chinese name and it's easier for me to remember it. Another one said, I learned Biningalwak using the cultural background of my first language. I found some similarities between my language and Biningalwak in terms of culture, behaviour and even words. These similarities in turn motivate me to learn it. I'll skip that last one. So it seems like even the international students were finding ways to connect to Benin through the language course. Even if they had no direct personal connection, they were finding ways to connect in different ways. So the take-home message that I wanted to share is it is possible to use Indigenous pedagogies to mitigate the potentially isolating effects of online learning. So in this way, you can build connections between the learners themselves, who might be in different cities or different places, but between the learners and the speech community. By using the skin system and the kinship system, they're connecting in a valid way from the Benin perspective. But it also engages the learners as more than just learning something out there, but becoming part of a larger system. And you can create resources that can support those kind of connections and activities between learners and with speakers to reinforce the connections. And so the project demonstrates how the potentially isolating effects of online learning can be mitigated through incorporating Indigenous ways of learning and Indigenous ways of connecting. So using skin names gives the students an identity in the Benin world and connects them to each other and with Benin, despite the geographic distance. So there might be some ideas there that other people can take on board. So it's not just learning an abstract concept of language, but actually connecting with people who identify with the language, and in this case use it regularly, but even for languages that don't have such a strong speech community, that those concepts can still be transferred. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Kathy. Yes, people are applauding, and I, again, can only join them. Thank you so much. This is also impressive work and very nice observations. Before I perhaps make a question or two myself, we got 2 questions already in the chat. So, Evans Warra, would you like to pose your question yourself? Then please switch on your microphone.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning, good afternoon.
Yeah, so I'm from Malawi, Zomba in particular. In the presentation, you mentioned something like in one of your online pilot programs, you had a variety of students who took part, including international students. So I was interested in when you are developing the materials, when you are structuring the courses, how do you make sure that it is suitable for a particular target group of students which you are targeting? In this case, if it's a variety of students, including international students, was the material, in the way you developed the material, was it suitable for such a variety, a wide variety of students?
Thank you for the question. It's challenging. So we were working in a university context, so expecting people at a certain educational level. And rather than thinking we need something for each different type of person, we thought anyone who comes to a binning community to work with local people, what do they need to know? So it doesn't matter if they're there as a scientist or a doctor or a teacher, what do they need to know? And so for the learners themselves, we tried to cover quite a range of culture, but we wanted to teach everything from the perspective of the Indigenous people, so what they thought about things, rather than a language course where the first thing you learn is hello, please, thank you, which we actually don't use those terms in Binnengunwok. And we had sections on things like the environment and art and music and health. So people who were studying in different disciplines could engage with those particular topics of more interest to them. So we tried to keep a wide range of topics in there, but really trying to present it from the binning perspective. You can't please all the people all the time. It's very hard to customize it perfectly for every individual learner. So I don't have a good answer for that, but that's sort of how we approached it. If people who might eventually come to work in that community, what do they need to know?
Excellent, thanks. Even, can you switch off your microphone again after the question? Thank you. We have a second question from Susie Greenwood as well. Again, half personal, but I think it's interesting for everybody as well.
Thanks, Cathy. That's really interesting. I'm just wondering, because we're thinking about how we might introduce Ghana into the university curriculum. At the moment, we've got a course that runs, that Rob runs, which is a sort of case study looking at the reclamation process with a little bit of Ghana and a lot of culture. But we're thinking about how we might be able to produce some tertiary resources. So I'm just wondering if the online course is still available. Is it still running? It would be great to actually take the course to have experience of an Indigenous language tertiary course and get some ideas of how that might work.
Sure, we're running the course at the moment. We're in end of week 9 of semester 2.
Oh, missed it.
That's all right. We've also got the original pilot course is still available. I'll put the link in. So it's a few years old, it needs updating, but it gives you an idea of the structure and the way we've used multimedia and structured the lessons and so on. So I'm very happy for people to have a look at that and learn a bit of Binnengunwok on the way. And
that would be great, yeah.
I mentioned that we put together is available for anyone to use. So for groups that maybe can't afford to use Blackboard or don't have the technical nous to use a Moodle or something, the digital shell is meant to be easy to use, free of charge, a template that you can put your own language content into. So I'll share links to both of those in the chat.
Fantastic, thanks Cathy.
Great. I have a question myself, and as I don't see any new question coming in the chat, I will ask it. You mentioned very briefly an archive that you have set up or are setting up at the Charles Darwin University, and archiving is one of my past activities and specialties, so I'm intrigued by that. Are you collaborating with IATSIS or Paradisec, or there are quite a number of local digitizing and archiving initiatives around in Australia? I only mentioned the two that I'm most familiar with. And are you aware if that kind of material that you are producing, so the online courses and so forth, is that archived as well? I think there is a number of opportunities, including dialogues. If everybody agrees, it might be material that new students coming in would like to listen to earlier dialogues in order to already be familiar and hear pronunciation and correction of pronunciation and so forth. So that might be something to consider, to archive those so that it is preserved and available for everybody.
So in answer to your first question, the Living Archive of Aboriginal Languages came out of a concern for the materials that were published in bilingual education programs in the Northern Territory from the mid-1970s. And with the sort of closure of most bilingual programs, those materials were being lost or thrown out. So we collected and digitized them and put them on an open access website, but I'll put a link to that as well. Basically as a rescue mission to keep them. So we do share our materials with IATSIS, and the metadata is harvested through the National Library and OLAC and so on. So Paradisec is more for sort of linguistic language documentation type processes. So we're certainly in relationship with Paradisec, although our material isn't in there as such. So it's a separate archive from both of those, but we certainly interact with, especially IATSIS and also with the National Library. For your second question, even though I was involved in the Living Archive, I haven't done a good job of archiving the Biningual materials. That's certainly something we need to look into. But I think having those materials, we've also, the language community is very open and want everything to be shared. But in this context, because some of it's a university course where students are paying money for that, then we have to kind of balance the intellectual property arrangements between the Biningual Language Centre and the university. So making certain things available to everyone and others that if you pay for the course, you get the rest of it. So we're still negotiating some of that at the moment. But yes, I think we should find ways to archive that material so that it is more accessible. And as I mentioned, the digital language shell, the template is available for other people to use, and it would come with the first couple of lessons of Biningual that you could modify to your own purposes and substitute in the language that you need and restructure it all together as you like. So we wanted to make something shareable and easy to use so that others wouldn't have to start from scratch to build the kind of resources they might want, to build the kind of template for sharing, but also to house some of the materials they've already got. So the shell is not an archive itself, but it can be used to share materials that are available or can be created, and to keep them, the idea was to keep it under Indigenous authority so that people, the owners of the language would have the right to say what goes in there, what gets shared and with whom. So that's what we developed that for.
Excellent. Wow. Yeah, that's exactly what I was really interested in, and it's good to see that things are moving in that direction to make this available. Great. Thank you, Cathy, again for the wonderful talk and answering questions. Thanks again. We are excellently on time, so I would like to introduce our next speaker, who is Miho Zlazli from SOAS in London. So it's 8 o'clock in the morning at SOAS in London right now. So I see Miho already getting ready. So it is about the MAI or MAI-Ryukyus project for new speakers. Miho, the floor is yours. I will interrupt at 7, 3, and 1 minute just to remind you.
Thank you so much. I have a terrible stage fright, so I prepared pre-recorded video. It's 20 minutes long, so I think it should be fine. Okay, I'm gonna start. Oh, sorry.
I'm Hello, I am Miho Zlazli from SOAS University of London. I am originally from Okinawa Island, one of the Ryukyuan islands in the southwest region of the current territory of Japan. I conduct an action research project called MAI-Ryukyus, which stands for Master Apprentice Initiative Ryukyus, in order to support new speakers of Ryukyuan languages. I am also one of them. I designed this project based on Dr. Lian Hinton's Master Apprentice Language Learning Program. Today, I'd like to introduce what I am doing and the current findings from my research. I'm going to talk about the first, where did Ryukyuan people come from? In this section, I will briefly introduce the history of Ryukyuan people and language contact they have experienced. Then I will move on to Ryukyuan identities. As you will find out from our history, we have some confusions over how we address ourselves, which also affects our sense of identity. And the last, I will introduce my action research project, MAI-Ryukyus. So where did Ryukyuan people come from? If you look at the map, you can find yellow highlighted islands on the right-hand side of the map. They are the indigenous territories of Ryukyuan people. They extend across 600 miles from the southwest to the northeast, consisting the east border of the East China Sea, neighboring to Japan, China, and Taiwan. Nearly 50 islands are inhabited, out of more than 150 islands. Our climate is subtropical, and we have rich coral reefs fed by the Kuroshio Current coming up from the Philippine Sea in the south. In prehistoric era, other people lived in our islands. It is said that Proto-Ryukyuan language speakers began to arrive at Ryukyuan Islands in the Yayoi era from the south part of Japan, and continued to arrive until the end of the Tang Dynasty in China in the 9th century. The Yamato Kingdom, which is green highlighted on the left map, was one of the tributary states of the Tang Dynasty, and they used to navigate the water near the Ryukyuan Islands. It is said that if the Tang Dynasty didn't fall at that time, Ryukyuan Islands could be ruled under the ancient Yamato Kingdom, which didn't happen. Recently, Yosuke Igarashi and his colleagues at the National Institute for Japanese Language and Linguistics in Tokyo actively conduct research on phylogenetic reconstruction of Japanese and Ryukyuan languages based on a cladistic method called common innovations. As you can see from the diagram on the left-hand side, Ryukyuan languages and Japanese languages share a common ancestor. And they found that the dialect sister languages of Ryukyuan languages are said to be South Kyushuan languages, as highlighted blue and red on the map. When agrarian societies began to form, small polities emerged across the islands. By the end of the 14th century, they were ruled under 3 kingdoms.
When the Ming dynasty rose, these three kingdoms became a tributary state of Ming respectively. Then one of them eventually unified the whole island. The old Ryukyu kingdom is well known for the wide intermediate trades across the East and Southeast Asia as far as Indonesia under the tributary system of the Ming dynasty. The Ryukyu kingdom's relationship with Japan was quite well at that time, and the Ryukyus considered Japan as their same kin. However, in the 16th century, following Portugal's capture of Malacca, as well as the decline of the Ming dynasty, the Ryukyu kingdom's trade also declined. In the end of the 16th century, Japan tried to conquer the East Asia, including Korea and China, and damaged the diplomatic relations with them. Tokugawa shogunate, the unified government of Japan at that time, tried to use the Ryukyu kingdom to restore the relationship with China. When the Ryukyus refused their request, Satsuma, under the rule of shogunate, invaded the Ryukyus. Since then, Satsuma began to directly rule the north part of the Ryukyus, Amery, and indirectly rule the rest of the Ryukyus. But they made the Ryukyus appear to be independent in the eye of the imperial China. The time of the new Ryukyu kingdom as a puppet state of Japan was a strange time. Ironically, it built the golden age of royal culture and the finest Ryukyuan performance art as a hospitality to the delegates from China, as well as literatures, craftsmanship, agriculture, and transportation network. The first formal record of Ryukyuan history was also published, but it contained propaganda to justify the rule of Japan. In contrast, commoners' life was extremely difficult. Traditionally, the Ryukyu kingdom had already been a feudal society, but the heavy taxation by Satsuma made the kingdom develop a more strict hierarchical society. Commoners were trapped in their own small community called shima to produce more crops and products. People married within their community to increase more labor force, but a large population died from hunger. There was a symbolic earthquake in 1771 in Yaeyama region. Almost one-third of the population were killed by high tide of tsunami, and another one-third in the following century due to famine and plague. Instead of helping commoners, the kingdom forced a fraction of commoners to migrate to a declined shima, or forced them to cultivate untouched jungle. Therefore, Yaeyama region has the most complex distribution of regional language varieties. Each highlighted region has distinct linguistic features, although this categorization is quite simplified. Because of the fragmented social structure of commoners, it is said that a few hundred Shima languages exist across the Ryukyu Islands. When Japan was forced to open their borders by Western power, a new government Meiji emerged in order to build a fully centralized state to compete against the Western power rather than surrendering. Japanese government demolished the Ryukyu kingdom and divided it into two different prefectures of Japan. Commoners who were oppressed under the feudal society stood up for their rights, but it was used by the Japanese government to assimilate Ryukyuans to feed them into Japanese military manpower. It intensified up to the Second World War including forbidding them to use Ryukyuan languages and forcing them to speak standard Japanese. When Japan lost the war, the United States occupied most of the Ryukyuan islands, even after Japan restored its sovereignty in the 50s. Japanese citizens enjoyed welfare and a rapid economic growth, while Ryukyuans under occupation suffered from poverty and humiliation. They eventually felt wanting to live under the wing of Japanese. They internalized the assimilation policy which used to be imposed over them. Now, they stopped transmitting Ryukyuan languages. Rather, they wanted their children to catch up with Japanese and live a better life. In 1965, the Prime Minister Sato declared, "Our post-war never ends without having Okinawa back to Japan." Ryukyuan people were called Okinawans collectively because Ryukyuan islands under occupation used to be labeled as Okinawa Prefecture by the Japanese government. Although Okinawa indicates only a part of diverse Ryukyuan regions. Ryukyuan people under occupation got excited. They thought they could get rid of the American bases. However, the agreement between the US and Japan turned out to allow the existence of the American bases. This conflict still exists now. Since Ryukyuan Kingdom became a part of Japan, many Ryukyuan people, and also Japanese people who were suffering from poverty, became economic migrants. Japanese government also encouraged them to go abroad to financially support the local economy back in Japan. This is the statistics of migration from my village Yomitan in Okinawa Island. As you can see, there are many diasporas across the world. We maintain the international supportive network well until now. We have international festivals called World Okinawan Festival. It is understandable because migration started only after the Ryukyu Kingdom was annexed to Japan and labeled as Okinawa Prefecture. However, now we have a momentum of raising awareness of what it means to be Ryukyuans. Because of our history, we don't have a unified umbrella term for our identity, such as Ryukyuan, as I use when I speak English. All we have is only our local identity, such as Yaeyama, Miyako, Amami, or Yonaguni, or even smaller unit, Shima. If Okinawans is not good enough, then what about islanders? It sounds great in English. However, if you say islanders in Okinawan Ryukyuan, it will be Shimanchu. And one way of saying in Yaeyaman Ryukyuan, which I heard from a friend of mine, would be Sumapitu. Sounds totally different. As a Japanese speaker, I thought polynomic writing system using kanji characters would be fantastic, as this orthography indicates meaning of the word and people can assign their own reading. But it will be still difficult for people who are unfamiliar with kanji, or people who are still new to the language, without having chance to listen to the sound. Another issue of using Okinawan as substitute of Ryukyuan is that Okinawa has been the most dominant region, which had the political center of the Ryukyu Kingdom. In fact, Okinawan people tend to be blind to the diversity of Ryukyuan Islands. I have a feeling that it may constantly hurt the feeling of people from other islands, especially those who are descendants of the oppressed under the regime of the Ryukyu Kingdom. Therefore, in my action research, I actively work with new speakers from diverse backgrounds to search for what it means to be Ryukyuans, as well as how we can achieve indigenous efflorescence, not just going back to the state of their ancestors. Finally, this is what I have conducted as my PhD research in the Ryukyu Islands since last summer in 2019. Due to COVID-19, I currently focus on developing resources listed on the box highlighted with yellow color. This project is based on Hinton's Master Apprentice program, in which new speakers form a pair with speakers and learn their language through daily life as they spend time together. Hinton's program is intensive. They spend time together for 10 to 20 hours per week. They also get paid for their sessions. In case of Ryukyuan context, we find it very difficult, and most people had a high level of anxiety, as if they were just given an empty box of time. They didn't know what to feel in the box. Also, they felt very reluctant to turn up to the follow-up sessions with me, feeling guilty that they couldn't achieve anything. I had a task-based type of activities in my mind first, but we noticed that we should be close enough to the speakers first and build authentic relationship. And also, it is not only language that we are missing. We suffer from disconnection from the life stories and memories of older generations and ancestors. Now, while our team developed the resources to support new speakers until we can visit the field next time, I have monthly online meetings with new speakers, and I recommend them to listen to their life stories or help them whenever they need help to build an authentic relationship and to have a meaningful time on its own. It is okay to spend several months before starting actual learning. Now, more and more young people are trying to reconnect with their older generations. I intended to create a safe, supportive network for new speakers, but such spaces already exist, both online, such as on Instagram, or offline. Such peer networks sustain new speakers' motivation and give space to explore their new identity. The biggest challenge for me is to form an interdisciplinary team to support new speakers. I have two major housekeeping rules for myself. In the field of endangered languages, there are quite a few different stakeholders with different goals and motivations. We researchers are also one of them. We are inclined to believe that we have the third-person omniscient point of view, but we are just one of those stakeholders too. New speakers are the protagonist. The second housekeeping rule is, again, the new speakers are the protagonists. We are just a supporting character in their life story. As a supporting character, we only have a limited point of view. You speakers or anyone in the community have right to be not known of certain things. And even they share their privacy with us, they have right to be not disseminated of certain things. My action research exists to empower new speakers centered on reciprocal relationship. And this is part of decolonization. Thank you. The presentation has finished.
Okay, great. Thank you, Miho. Indeed. Wonderful, yes. Are you sitting right now in London or are you in Japan? Just curiosity.
I really want to go back to the field, but I'm stuck in London because of COVID-19.
I understand, yes.
And can I speak a little bit more?
Yes, please.
I thought before inviting other people to join my master apprentice program, I thought maybe I should try out by myself first. Then I started doing this with my father and grandmother. But now my grandmother is 103, my father is 80, and I'm stuck in London. Every night I have a dream of them going away. So it's very painful for me somehow. Yeah. This kind of research is really overwhelming. It's very difficult, but I think it's worth to do.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you very much indeed. We have one question already from Chet. Chet, would you like to make your question yourself?
I think you are muted.
Chair, we can't hear you. Can you please switch on your microphone?
Yeah. Yes. Sorry for that. I was wondering whether there is a relationship and there are similarities of the position of your languages and the Ainu language in the north of Japan. Of course, the languages in the north are completely different, the Ainu languages, but your languages are related, but also different from each other. But are there relationships, so in the creation of a writing system, is there some government policy to stimulate the language learning and teaching?
We don't have any support from the government. And between Ainu and us, not only the language is different, but also the big difference between us is that we have our own indigenous territories and we live there. And we are majority when we are within the territory. But the Ainu people, they don't have their land. They are scattered all over Japan. Yeah, but I met one of Ainu people 2 years ago in Endangered Language and Dialect Summit organized by Japanese government. I was very happy to see new speakers of Ainu language, but I was also disappointed with the government. I mean, they organized the summit, they do it annually, but they are just doing it as gesture. The inside the boxes was empty.
Okay, thank you very much. And could you send
I was not answering your question. Sorry, what was your question?
The question was the similarity, but you answered it already. There might be other questions, but I should like to have some information, further information. I put my email address on the chat. So thank you very much, and I wish you success with your work.
Thank you so much.
It was great. Yeah.
Thank you.
Indeed, Miho, I also encourage you to read through the chat because you got a number of encouraging messages from people who participated in your talk. I have another question myself. You rightly mentioned that people in Okinawa in particular, which is like the core of the whole region, seem to underestimate or not to be aware of the diversity. But this also holds for your talk. You talked about the region as one region, and you explained very well the history and how the consciousness of being a different people arose. But I understand there are at least 10 different languages, Ryukyus languages. So can you very briefly say how many of them are very endangered or not so endangered, and what the different perspectives are? Because there's a lot of diversity on those islands.
I think I will show you my PowerPoint file. Can you see the? Am I still sharing my?
No, you're not. We are seeing everybody right now.
Okay. Can I share the screen again? Can you see the diagram of this? I can't hear you, Sebastian. You are muted.
We can see a diagram. This is Reed.
Okay.
So hi. Well done. It was an amazing talk.
Look, if you look at this tree of Japanese languages, all of the languages listed by UNESCO are Japanese languages. They are related. They share common ancestors, except Ainu. But because of the history, I wanted to contain all the presentation within 20 minutes, so I forgot to talk about dialects, definition of dialects for us. I think we have to, I think Ryukyuan people have to think of two types of dialects. One as a from social aspect, the other one is from linguistic aspect. I always believe wherever I live and whatever I speak, because I live in the center of the world, my language is a language, and my language will be never a dialect. But when we think about linguistic relationship, Ryukyuan languages are closely related to Japanese. So if you want to call it dialect, it can be dialect in dialectology. If we insist our language is completely different from Japanese, that just make us, that will just put us in difficult positions. I mean, Master Apprentice program, if you try to learn completely unrelated language to yours, it will be very difficult to learn. But because Japanese and Ryukyuan languages are closely related, if we recognize that, we can use a lot of resources from the research findings from dialectology all over Japan. So I'm networking with dialectologists, Japanese dialectologists. They always call our language dialect. That I don't like it, but I just put it aside and I try to get as much as information, linguistic information. Then I'm creating resources out of that for new speakers.
Great, thank you. I think you don't have to label your languages as dialects of Japanese to still be able to make use of the proximity to Japanese in language learning and so forth, because that doesn't change by the label. And indeed, I would insist, as far as I have heard, and Glottolog lists 11 different languages, and so there are different languages, and you should be proud of those anyway.
Languages are languages.
Exactly.
I agree with that. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Miho. We are at the end of our time, so thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful. And we have to continue, unfortunately, already to our last talk in this morning's session. Sorry, I'm fiddling with my microphone, which insists of being switched off. So now it's excellent. So our last talk is from Harvinder Negi, and I see him already online. So welcome. Thank you for being there. He's from the University of Delhi, and he will speak about orality in Kinnaur. Again, I will interrupt briefly if necessary, if I see necessary, at around 7, 3, and 1 minute to the end to your talk. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Am I audible? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. So I'm Harvinder Negi, and I'm from Kinnaur in Himachal Pradesh, and I will be presenting my paper on topic orality in Kinnaur. So I start here. So this picture, if I explain this picture is in my village at the hilltop of my village. And it is a local belief that after somebody dies, like someone dies in the village, so for 1 year that the person who dies, his soul does not leave the village. So for 1 year, their soul remains in.
Harvinder, sorry. Harvinder,
Yeah,
may I interrupt you? Do you have slides? If so, please share your screen, because we are not seeing anything. If you don't have slides, that is fine.
No, I have slide. Just 1 second. I thought I shared the slide. I'm sorry. Yeah, I started without sharing. I'm sorry.
Indeed.
I'm sorry for this.
That looks better. Thank you.
Yeah, now you can see the slides. Now you can see the slides.
Yes, we do. We do. Yes, thank you. Wonderful. Please start again.
Yeah. I was trying to explain the relevance of this picture to my community. I'm one of the Kinnaur speakers. This picture is taken at the hilltop of my village. So there we have a local belief that after someone dies, for 1 year his soul does not leave the place. Like for 1 year they remain in the mountains, and on this day, exactly after 1 year, this event comes. Like each year this event comes, and everyone from the village go to this hilltop, and offer food and seek blessings from the departed. And after that only that departed soul transcends to the different universe. So this is just like one of the folk traditions that I wanted to discuss. So giving a background to my study. So basically I will start with Kinnaur. Kinnaur is an oral community which has no writing system or any script, and whatever we know about Kinnaur so far is through orality and through oral traditions and oral literatures, and in which the ancestors, they have been passing on their memories and cultural heritage by word of mouth. So this cycle has been continuing, but then recently, because of modernity and some influence of Hindi and other languages, this tradition of intergeneration transmission of culture and languages, it has seen some interruptions. So there is I think there is a alarm in the orality in Kinnaur. So for that, with that thing in mind, I took up this project to document oral literature of Kinnaur for the protection and preservation of languages and culture of Kinnaur, which was funded by the Firebird Foundation, and I thank them for their grant. And then the outcomes that I discussed in these presentations are based on self-evaluations and my personal experiences. And so far, I have recorded almost 60 hours of audio, video, corpus of cultural practices from all the 3 regions of Kinnaur. And it consists of songs, legends, proverbs, marriage customs, and traditional knowledge and life stories and personal narratives. And all the documentations are being done in Hindi, which will be translated for larger accessibility further on. And this is the map of Kinnaur. So Kinnaur is a tribal region in the high mountains of Western Himalayas. And locally it is known as Kanuri, Kinnaur, Kannavur, or Kannavur. And as per the latest census, the population is 80,000, and ethnically they are uniformly, all the people here are from Kinnaur tribe. And there are 3 major languages spoken in the region based on their number of speakers. Those are Kinnauri, Hindi, and Boti. And as far as the religion is concerned, initially they were animist, but because of gradual changes took place because of the influence of Hinduism and Buddhism. And now we have a mixed religion that has some aspects of primitive animist beliefs, and then some aspects of Hinduism and then born Buddhism. And about the origin of term Kinnaur, locally they're known as, they're called Kanets or Kunets or Moon, and they all mean high hills in the mountains which are possessed by the ancestors. And then sociologically there are two castes in Kinnaur, Kunnas and Bairu, and they all use the surname Negi. And there are many stories of their origin. There are many theories of their origin. One is the mythological theory that links the present day Kinnauras to the Pandavas. It is believed in these Pandavas, they are important character in the Hindu epic, from the Hindu epic Mahabharata. So it is believed that they spent their time in their last year of their exile, a hiding period. So the present day descendants, some of them, they feel they are the descendants of those Pandavas. And then there is migration theory, which have been given by Cunningham and Oppert. They linked the present day Kinnauras with Colorian Mundas and then Gauda Dravidian races. But then these don't have a detailed etymological study to say anything for certain. Like in future, if there is any comparative or etymological study, we definitely we will get some clear results on that. The closest theory that is also found in the folk literature or the folk songs or tales, it says that the inhabitants of this place, the Kinnaur, they were among the earliest inhabitants of the inner Himalayas. So they have been living there since the longest known times. It was only in the 6th century BC that sorry, the Kushan king Kanishka, he ruled over this place. The entire North India was his part. If we call it North India, that time Kinnaur was also part of his kingdom. And around 8th century AD, the present day Kinnaur came under the Bushayad monarch, and it remained under their rule till the independence of India in 1947. And in 1960, this region was declared a separate district and named Kinnaur. Before that, it was known Chine or Chini. So Kinnaur officially it was named in 1960. So let me brief you with the language profile of the area. So there are 8 languages in the region, and 7 are in Sino-Tibetan language family, and 1 is from the Indo-Aryan language family. So they are Kinnauri, Shamchu, Shunnam, Tukpa, Bhoti, Chitkul, and Jangshung. And none of these languages have any script except Bhoti. But then the use of that Bhoti script is also for only for limited purpose, like for religious teachings or just to they just have information about the history of Buddhism and their religious gurus. In daily use, Bhoti has no use, and all the varieties have equal status, and they are all equally prestigious. But Kinnaur language is used by the majority of people, so it is used more or like in lingua franca in the region, along with Hindi now. So this is the map of Kinnaur. So we can see on one side we have a Tibet border. Alongside Tibet border, we have languages like Bhoti, Jangshung, Shamchu, and Chitkul. On the other side, bordering Indo-Aryan Shimla region, we have Pahadi Kinnauri and Kinnaur proper. And then we have two languages spoken in the mid of Kinnaur, that is Shunnam and Tukpa. Looking at the figures, these are the Census of India figure. Actual figure of number of language speakers is not available because of lack of any proper socio-linguistic study in Kinnaur. So looking at the Census of India data, we can figure out that languages like Shunnam, Tukpa, Shamchu, Chitkul, and Jangshung, they are spoken by a very small number of people. So as per the UNESCO parameters, these are endangered languages, and in future they have a threat of being lost to us. So now coming, now coming to the other oral literature of Kinnaur. So the entire initial resources in Kinnaur was available to us orally, verbally, as living cultures, or as which was being practiced in the community as customs and as traditions, or which was either being transferred over generations in the form of memories by our ancestors. And these oral traditions, they were crucial to connect us with our past, and in the present to give us an identity, and so that we can bond with our peers across the generation. I mean, it is crucial for future of vitality of this crucial cultural heritage. So
7 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So now, because of the modernity and changes which are coming in our society, the orality is facing a threat of continuity. So literary form or documentation becomes relevant or important. So in Kinnaur, the literary forms of all this oral literature, it was started in late 19th century. The first one the first one to write anything about the language and the culture of Kinnaur was Cunningham, who published Gerard's account of Kinnaur. Then there was he gave a short description of language, and then there was Bailey and Joshi, who gave a short vocabulary list, and then short grammatical descriptions. And then there was Gerson, who described languages of Kinnaur. And then there were some anthropological reports, and then some ethnological studies, and then there were some PhD studies which came up along the time. And then there was one survey done by PLSI, People's Linguistic Survey of India, in 2016, published in 2016. They worked on the folk songs and folk tales of Kinnaur, along with a description of grammar. But then one important aspect is that all this literary form, all this work done was only in one variety of Kinnauri language, which is the Kinnauri proper. or we can say Kinnauri spoken by the majority. So other remaining 6 or 7 languages, they are very poorly documented. Only in recent that there are some, because of awareness to document endangered languages, there are some researchers working on other varieties of Kinnauri. Shamchu is one, Chitkuli is one. Then I myself is working on Shunnam and Bhoti and Tuppa and Jangshong. So as far as, and also one important aspect is that all these writings are in English or Hindi. And none of them have audio video recording, so which makes their scope or relevance for the natives complicated. So it may be useful for academia or for researchers or for further like future use by researchers for if they wish to revive at some stage when the language dies. But at present, for the community, it's not that much relevant. But this is my observation. So as far as talking about language use in the community, I found out that there are, because of constant language contact in the area over the history, there have been interactions of local languages with Tibetan, Bhoti, and then some other Indo-Aryan languages, and a lot of loan words have come in the local languages, and which have become, some have become the part of the local vocabulary, but replacing the old traditional Kinnauri terms. There are some concepts which are new to the local languages, so they are new additions to the local languages. So one side, it causes disappearance to the old vocabulary, and other side it adds to the knowledge of the local community. So it's going both ways. So as far as the role of Hindi is concerned, it has become a major lingua franca, replacing Kinnauri. Now, because of increased relevance of Hindi, because the education policy and the state government policies, they also are tilted towards promotion of Hindi, and so Hindi has become the dominant language there. And local languages, like especially in Kinnaur, it has no place in either in curriculum or school. So because of that, also the use of language has reduced. Among the elders, they are multilinguals. Most of them are multilinguals, knowing one or more than one local language. Their knowledge of Hindi is very limited, only to official or some, when they talk to their children, they have to talk in Hindi. So that is the demand of education, because children go to Hindi medium schools. So parents have to work them in their school work, so they have to talk in Hindi. Younger speakers, they are speaking Hindi most of the times. Local languages, they may have knowledge, but then their use is limited. And their exposure to Hindi or English is, it has increased compared to local languages. Be it schools, be with friends, or any TV programs or recreation like games, TV, cartoon shows, everything is in Hindi or English. So that leaves little or no space for the oral languages. So what I have done in this project, this is the short review of the aspects of culture that I have documented through interviews and through my daily observations and recordings. So I have tried to document all the aspects of oral literature, rituals, text, and songs, and folklores, and indigenous knowledge. And this is the changes that this influx of Hindi and modernity has caused to the local cultural diversities. That many local words have been replaced. And then many there's one important ceremony, there was some naming ceremony. This used to be an important even in the local community. So, I mean, a lama used to select the name for the newborn, and it had relevance to the local people. But now that naming ceremony has been replaced by modern names. Now every parent, they give their children modern names. And
can you please start to round up?
Yeah, sure, definitely. Sorry. So the most important aspects of oral literature in Kinnaur that I found is endangered is secret languages of deities, which are most threatened. Then their traditions are of storytelling, lullabies, many legends are already lost. Then there are farming practices, they have been replaced by modern techniques of farming. And then songs, rituals which associated with farming practice, they are also gone. And youngsters, they just don't remember the history of their ancestors or local heroes or creation stories. So the entire fabric of oral literature is threatened in Kinnaur, because both intergeneration and intra-generation transfer is at stake. It's not happening. So this is the summary of my present and future plannings. So I have identified oral literatures that need urgent documentation, and those are, as I told earlier in the earlier slide, folk songs, oral histories, ritual practices, historical plays, documentations. I have identified and I am working on to document them. And then I am trying to revive the storytelling traditions by talking to elders, and whatever collections I have, I'm planning to codify them and then translate and transcribe them and share in the digital media for a larger visibility, so that the local community will have access to it, to all the recordings, and then they can use for future efforts to revive their lost cultural traditions.
Harvinder, you are 2 minutes over time. Okay, you are at the end.
Yeah, I'm done. Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, sorry for being harsh, but we have to be strict because the next session will start soonly. Thank you so much for this talk. Okay. Thank you, Harvinder. I think this comes from everybody. Yes, I'm seeing a number of nigging faces, so very well. We have 2 questions already from Pautang Haukip. Pautang, would you like to make that question yourself? Then please switch on your microphone.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes,
am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, yes,
okay,
sir.
My question is, I am so thrilled to hear about your wonderful work and those recordings. I am concerned with those recordings. You said you have around 60 hours of recordings.
Yeah.
So what do you do with these recordings? Do you transcribe them? Do you translate them into English, Hindi, or other dominant languages of the area? So is it just a recording, or what are you doing to reach out this recording to other community, not from this language background? So can you share some of your experience?
Yeah, sure, sir. Thank you. Yeah. At this stage, I'm recording as much possible oral literature in the community, and it consists of songs and tales and oral histories and everything. So side by side, I'm translating these to English at this stage, and at later stage, I plan to translate this in Hindi, and then distribute this, and I will make this available on digital media. Like I will share this all the recordings on on internet for others to see if somebody wants to know about that community. And those oral resources can be used for documentation of languages also of Kinnaur, because out of 8 languages in Kinnaur, only 1 or 2 are described to an extent. Other 5 or 6 languages, they don't have any published work at this stage. So this is my planning, that whatever I collect now at this stage, it can be used in future. This will be available to everyone. Like I will share this with everyone in Hindi and English.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
We have another question from Hakim. Hakim, would you like to put your question yourself, and please switch on your microphone?
Hi. Yes, thank you, Negi, for this interesting presentation.
Thank you.
My question concerns the religious language, and if there is a literature in this language. The reason I'm asking this question because in the neighboring communities towards northern Pakistan, I know that although they have local languages, which is very different from their religious literature, religious language, which have been there for centuries. So I wonder if there is such a literature we call manuscripts in the language which are used as to perform rituals or religious ceremonies in this community.
Yeah, there is one secret language this is called there is one Grox. Grox means like who interacts with the local deity. He is the person who talks to the deity, and that language is a secret language. And in many parts of Kinnaur, that recording is to record that language it's prohibited, and only very few know that language. Some people who are performing that task of interacting with the local deity, only those can know and comprehend that language. So from my side, what I'm trying to do is like I'm just trying based on what I hear and what I can get from those priests or locally called Grokch, what I can gain from obtain from them, I'm trying to document that. But locally that is secret, that cannot be recorded or recorded per se. So there are each and every village they have a local deity, and there is Groks who talks to the deity on behalf of the villagers. So everyone they have this secret language. Every deity, every village they have secret languages, and this secret language is similar across the district, across the region. So be it in Shamchu region or in the Chitkul region, this secret language will be same.
Thank you.
Great. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, so I will just point you at a comment which came in from Julia Sadebank, who is suggesting that maybe instead of spending hundreds of hours transcribing the text that you have, it might be possible to make some multimedia products which might appeal to the young people. And we, in the first talks in this session, we had wonderful examples of that. So that is indeed a valuable suggestion made by Julia. And I will also point you to the comment made by Nicholas that we don't have enough time to go into and answer. So at this point, I would like to thank you very much for this engaging talk and for answering your questions afterwards. This was really great done. Thank you very much. And thank everybody for participating in this session. I'm also thankful for everybody being in time. So this was a session which took me too much effort to keep it in time. So thank you very much to everybody, and I wish you a wonderful continuation of the conference. Thanks.